they changed what they said. Last time they used to say something different. Recording in progress. Well, thank you, Dr. John Elfers, for being our guest speaker today. So this is another. This is our seventh meeting, I believe. 2-4-5th meeting. 2-4-5th meeting. Felt like 7, but maybe it's 5th. Fifth meeting of the Transpersonal Student Community Professional Meet. Dr. John Elfers is our guest speaker today. He's the director of the Dissertation Office and the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at Sofia University. He's been personally encouraging and influential in my own dissertation process. I listened to him speak on Instagram Live on Sofia's Instagram with a Sofia student, Emily Bishop. I believe she's in the MACP program. And he mentioned getting into teaching as a way of continuing to embrace his expression as a lifelong student. I personally resonate with this, and this is sort of the dynamic here in having this, facilitating this space, holding this community. I think in transpersonal psychology, we're all lifelong students to some degree, lifelong students of the great mysteries of the human psyche and the universe. One insight that he gave me personally was about my inner dissertation and that sort of that transformative process that we're all going through from students and to student professionals. That is what we are here to do, to empower each other with the community and tools necessary to promote our generativity in the field of transpersonal psychology. So I really appreciate Dr. John Elfers for being here today. We have like 3 guiding questions for our meeting today, as we have in previous meetings. And so these guiding questions are, what is the process of becoming a professor? What is the process of publishing and co-authorship? And what can we do to increase our generativity in the field? Dr. John Elfers, John, we've been speaking on email, and we'd just be interested in listening and hearing about your professional trajectory, where you got started. Again, some of that information can be found also on the IG Live of Sofia University's Instagram. He did a good opening there as well. So, John, take it away.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, and that helps me. I was going to talk a little bit about my kind of circuitous journey,
please,
to get to where I am, and then I hope to land. So I hope I don't take too long. I'll kind of see how it goes. If I'm talking too much, just move me along. But where I hope to land is coming back around to the center, and sort of by the time I get there, you'll kind of see what my journey was to be there, and everything I learned about education along the way, and being a lifelong learner. And thank you for that feedback on what you took out of the other presentation, because that was very meaningful for me. It was an important part. So I'll kind of land there, and if then we want to talk about publishing and all that, I have some things to share about that as well. So let me kind of go back in time. At this point in my life, I turned 69 this month. So I have the wisdom of kind of a long view over many years, having gone through many permutations, or as I like to say, chapters or lifetimes in my life. And so I'm going to try to pick out some of those elements that I think are most relevant and meaningful to how I got here. And the arc of this trajectory really has 3 elements as I think about it. One is just sort of the personal element, and one is a professional element, is part of this journey. And then the third is a spiritual element. So I'm going to kind of weave all these 3 together. So back to the beginning, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in a musical family. My grandfather was a piano player and organist, and every one of his 4 sons who grew up, he assigned an instrument. You're playing clarinet, you're playing trumpet. My dad played drums. And so he had an orchestra with his children. And so I grew up in a family, my dad was in 3 different orchestras. And so when I was 9 years old, my dad came to me and said, Well, we need a bass player for the band. So wait, that's not what I want to do. That's for later. So here we go.
I expected you to be a harpist or something.
Yeah, no, I played bass fiddle. This was me at age 9. A little
Wow,
show and tell.
that's
I'm
awesome.
telling you, music was never the same in Cincinnati after this. This was, anyway. So that's sort of where I started. But
Is that your whole family?
no, this was Three Jacks and a Jill. No, I would play with my father's orchestra, but this when I was 9, I was taking lessons and
Nice.
whatever. Mostly I played with my dad and uncles in a band probably every Saturday night for 10 years. That's how I learned, So, and then in high school and college, I played rock and roll and made a living playing music actually for a while. But so that was kind of the musical strand, which I loved and is very much part of my soul. But at the same time, I also grew up in a Catholic family. And so for 8 years, I went to Catholic school and did all of that and went to church every day and was an altar boy. And so at age 12 and 13, I knew that I wanted to be a Catholic priest. I was ready to start. So at age 14, I went away to Catholic seminary for 4 years. And so this is where I spent 4 years at a seminary near Chicago. It was pretty cold up there, but so I spent 4 years of my life at this place. And I'll just kind of give you a little bit of idea of what this means. So our schedule, I was 14 years old. This was 1966. So I had just turned 14. So this was our schedule. The bell would ring at 6 o'clock. We were in bunk beds. We were all in silence. There were 150 guys, and we would, get ready, file down to chapel for morning prayers. 6:30 was breakfast, still in silence till we said our, prayers down there. Then we had a half hour of work period. At the school, we did all of the dusting, waxing floors, cleaning, mowing the lawns, everything, and the dishes. And so, and then we had a half hour work period. We had 2 classes, mass, 2 more classes, lunch, a couple more classes, then a little time off in the afternoon. Oh, another hour of work period in the afternoon. Then from 5:30 to 6, we had meditation and benediction. Then we had dinner, and then a little bit of free time, but every night from 7:30 to 10 o'clock, so 2.5 hours was monitored study hall. We had all the guys, 150 guys in a big room at our desks, and a priest would walk up and down. And if you were a freshman, you had to have your Latin book on your desk for the first hour. And of course, so from 7:30 at night until 6 in the morning was called grand silence. So we were not allowed to talk. We were studying, we were up, in our room. So, this is what I was doing at age 14. I had a little different experience than most people had. The strictness really didn't bother me. I thought like, yeah, I'm on my way to my career. I didn't feel like this was inhibiting at all. I got this amazing education. I mean, I studied Latin for 3 years, and all my teachers were priests. They all knew Latin and Greek, and then whatever they were doing. My French teacher was a Dutchman, so he knew Latin and Greek, and he was Dutch, and he was teaching French to English students. That was just one of my teachers, so we got a really phenomenal education and a great experience, an opportunity to really show our, to really grow. So I would do it again. Sometimes I think back, gosh, would I really do that again? I really would. And I think what's significant here is what I most learned at that very tender growing age was what it meant to live in a spiritual community. And we were all so young that, there was so much, I had to learn to get along with all these different people. The people were from all over the Midwest, and we had to bond and get along. We had to work together. So the whole thing about working or living in a community, and a spiritual community at that, was really significant and fundamental to so much of my work later. It didn't actually make sense to me until about 20 years ago when I was really reflecting. It's like, wait a minute, that's where I learned how to be in community, really. And so it really served me well over the years. And that's a lot of the work I bring, not only to education, but a lot of the work I've done over the years and now at Sofia. But after 4 years, by 1970, I knew I was not going to be celibate for my whole life. I mean, the hormones were flowing. I had this kind of divide. I really just tuned into all this guilt I had internalized about, the kind of Catholic messages around sex. And I was always in the confessional for something or other, and so I'm very fond of saying that I can smell guilt a mile away. I lived it. And I had this kind of real, kind of divide in me around all of that and conflict. So I knew I wasn't going to be celibate. So after high school, I moved on and went back home and went to college. And so I was there, and then I really was, kind of a free spirit. This was like the 70s. Everything was kind of wide open. And I was reading all these books about Eastern religion and Alan Watts and Ram Dass and all these things. It was just what was happening. And then as I was in college, 1974 was a key year for me. All these things happened in 1974. I was 22. So the first big one was, I remember the day very clearly. It was this profound experience. I'm in the student union at college and I'm reading this book, and I come across this term that says sacred sexuality. And there was like these two worlds in my life that had never been together, that had this steel wall between them, suddenly for a few minutes just came together. And I was speechless. That's like, what? Like, no way. I mean, sex was over here, and religion and spirituality, they were over here. They were just like never on the same page. And the same two words together, unbelievable. So that started me on a path from 1974 till, as you know, today, I still study this on this kind of search about the connection between spirituality and sexuality. And I studied everything from that point on: Tantra, Kama Sutra, everything. I became a sex educator later on. I wrote sex education curriculum. I trained teachers on how to teach sex education in schools. I published a journal called Ecstasy on sacred sexuality. And then I did my dissertation on transcendent sexual experience. So you kind of get the pattern here. This sort of started me off on this journey. But so in one sense, I have to kind of, even though I had to go through all this, like, yeah, that was kind of painful to have that all that guilt and divide, but really the resolution and integration of that was pretty profound. Another thing that happened in 1974 is I'm reading all these books and I'm learning all about meditation. Well, we had meditation every day in seminary, but we weren't taught to meditate. It was more adoration and prayer is really what it was. And so I remember asking one of my classmates, he was at a college nearby me, and I go, "Hey, Eugene, what's this? I'm reading about meditation. Like, what is that?" And he said, "I don't know." He said, I think you just sort of stare at a spot on the ceiling or something. So what do? I go home, I lay on my water bed. I'm dating myself, water bed, right, in 1974. And I look at the ceiling and I pick a spot, and 5-6 minutes later, nothing's happening. So I go, something, I don't think this is it. But then I started seeing these signs about transcendental meditation. This was like really big, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And here were these classes you could take, learn to meditate. Well, at the time, it cost $40 to do transcendental meditation in 1974. That's how I know. Sometimes with other people, they go, "Oh, when did you do it?" I go, "How much did it cost?" Because I know mine was $40 and theirs was probably a lot more. But at the time, I was working for minimum wage, $1.75 an hour. I mean, it took me 20 hours to save up the money for that, which it took me a couple months actually. And then I went in, I did this thing, and that was another watershed event in 1974. I think for the next 3 years, I don't think I missed a day with my transcendental meditation, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. It changed everything. And then over the years, I sort of gravitated more into other forms. I did a lot of self-hypnosis and other kind of mantra meditation. And finally, in the mid 80s, I sort of switched over to mindfulness. But since 1974, I've had a regular sitting practice. And so I kind of go back that far. It was just like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. The other thing, in 1974, I saw these ads for a yoga class. Now, this was at a time, there was not even a yoga journal. I don't think I knew one other person in my whole sphere of anywhere that knew what yoga was. But I went to this class, I did it for a few months, and I've been sort of regular ever since. That was another sort of thing that was there. And then in the summer of 1974, I hitchhiked from Cincinnati to California and back. And you could do that then and still be alive, I guess. Although I had some interesting moments, which is a whole nother thing. But I met some people out there. I got introduced to Tarot and Kabbalah, and that was significant for me. I still, 45 years later, still, continued. It's very central to my practice. But I met some people back there and I went, okay, this is where things are happening. So right after college, I graduated, I jumped on a plane, I flew to California and never looked back. So the other thing I'll just say about kind of college, my college career, is that I really couldn't figure out what I wanted to study. I was all over the place, anthropology, psychology, and it's like, God, I got to make a decision. I got to graduate. So, and it even took me a year later because I took so long. So I finally decided, hey, I'm just going to study education because then I can just always be learning. And that's what I did. I got my degree in elementary education and, taught for a little bit at that point. So that's kind of where I got my started. My undergrad was originally in education. So then I moved to California and I was game for everything. I guess I learned from all these experiences, from meditation, yoga, and all that I really gravitated toward direct experience. So anything that came along in the late 70s, I was there. Rebirthing was big, massage therapy. I went to massage school in 1981 and became a massage therapist. Asked, I'll go try that. Holotropic breath work, I tried that. Astrology, ecstatic dancing, whatever, all the things. I was just game for anything transformative. And then around 1981, I also got excited about hypnotherapy. So I started this hypnotherapy practice. I was living in Santa Barbara, and for 6 years, I helped people with pain management, weight reduction, pattern, changing and behavior stuff and memory recall and all that. And then I got involved in past life regressions. I found out that, people would just sometimes just like without any suggestion, just go into a past life. So I got excited about all that literature, and I used to bring people together one time I brought people, like 8 people together for a weekend and just did past life regressions, one after the other, and talked about it and did all this stuff. So I was very involved in that. But I realized after 6 years, it's like, I love doing it. And I'm going, you know what? I'm doing therapy without a license. I need to go back to school and get a therapy license, which is what I did in 1987. I started doing that. But I do have to say, in all my reflection of all this time working with deep trance states, I learned more about education and teaching and more about therapy and counseling from hypnotherapy than I ever did in any methods course or counseling course. The art of subtle suggestion and all the Ericksonian stuff, and I was doing neurolinguistic programming, all that kind of stuff was really big right then, just sort of emerging. I learned more about, how to look at people and see when they were just in the right state for a suggestion, and motivation, how to motivate people with all of that. I learned so much. I feel like that just set me on a skill path that has really served me well anyway. So I went back to school, I got my therapy license, and then as I was getting my hours, I was a sex educator in the community for Planned Parenthood, and I did that for a while. And then suddenly the local schools in Ventura, where I was looking for someone to do this big statewide project that was happening around health education. A lot of money was coming in. And so they wanted someone with a drug prevention background, which I had, in sex education, and a teaching credential, and community building experience with, group therapy, which I had all this great background in that from some other things I had done. So 1990, I went back into education. So for the next 24 years, that was sort of my real career. Up till then, I was just following my bliss, as Joseph Campbell says, just following whatever. So for 24 years, I worked on a lot of statewide projects all over the state, and worked with teachers. I did a lot of professional development, how to teach sex education, drug prevention, how to teach skill-based approaches when you have to do more than information, like you're teaching assertiveness skills to kids in high school, and refusal skills and these kinds of things for health courses. So anyway, but one of the biggest projects I did, which I want to share just a little bit about, was in 1992. The AIDS epidemic was just raging at that point. I mean, from the 80s and then into the early 90s, and the big drugs hadn't come out, the effective drugs, the protease inhibitors and all that. So it was awful. And I was a sex educator, so we were doing HIV curriculum. And so the Department of Education wanted to start a program to bring people who were living with HIV and AIDS into classrooms to put a face to this thing. Kids are they're not waking up. It's not real to them. So a partner of mine and I, a colleague, we started a program for the Department of Education called Positively Speaking, which trained people with HIV and AIDS to go into classrooms and talk to kids. And so this was all over the state of California. And we would bring 8 to 12 people together who were living with HIV and AIDS and do this 2-day training where they would work on their story and dig deep into their story. And most of them came from trauma. I mean, particularly in the early phases, the ones who were coming to us were mostly gay men. I mean, that's where the epidemic was in that demographic. So many of them came from trauma. They had been stigmatized, discrimination, all this. And we were asking them to dig into their stuff, and really put together a personal story. And so then speakers would go into classrooms and share this. And in order to make it work, we recruited 45 agencies in California. I mean, we were all over the place. So almost one per county in California. There's 58 counties. So we had all these public health agencies who were recruiting speakers, and we'd come in and train. And we had 20 lead trainers who were just dynamite. And so all my experience in seminary of building community just sort of came back in. And so, also with mostly kind of gay men coming, this is where I became a real LGBT advocate. I don't know, I just learned to love the community, and these guys were my heroes, because these were people who, they were bullied in high school or middle school. They weren't sick, they had all, and now they were willing to go back in and say, if I could save one life from this, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to talk to these kids, at a place where I wasn't successful. I wasn't welcome, but I'm going to go back into that environment. And there were, after our trainings, I would hear people say all the time, I've been infected for 7 years. I've been to so many support groups. I got more out of these 2 days than all those support groups combined. And I know what it was. It was because we helped them craft a story. This was a storytelling model. This was going in and sharing a personal experience. So it was very successful. We were reaching 100,000 students a year in California. I mean, it was pretty amazing. In fact, that one, I just want to share one photo because when this group got together once a year, every year or more frequently, we would get all of our coordinators and lead trainers and everybody together. And when we were together, this group, I mean, you could feel the electricity. Things were humming. This was our group. I mean, you know, where am I? I'm over here. I don't know if you see me back there, looking a little younger there, John. But anyway, that was, I did that program for 10 years. I probably trained 250 speakers during that time, 300 speakers. We'd get them all together. And we still, there are still people doing this program, and I still have dear friends from that time. So that was pretty instrumental in my development, in my education career. And then funding dropped out in 2003. A lot of the priorities around AIDS and stuff shifted, and from the state office of AIDS, anyway, a lot of politics. But so then I had a little bit, not much to do. So at this point, you know, I had my therapy license. I was also a credentialed school administrator. And in our county where I lived, we really needed a drug treatment program. So I set up with a teacher. We started a school-based drug treatment program for high school students that went for 7 years. And it was called the Sober School. That's what the kids wanted to call it for whatever reason. And this was also very significant in my experience of education, because up until this time, I was mostly training teachers and all that. Now I'm back working with students. And I'd always, you know, since I had been studying education my whole career and learning all these things about what really works and what is effective. And I always thought, I would love to have a chance to really try all these things out and really do them. And in this program, we could do that, because you know what? These kids came from all over the county. We had 15 students. We had them all day, 6 hours. It was day treatment. We did an hour group every day. They had an amazing teacher who was in recovery, and we had counselors and all that. The school districts, they left us alone. As long as our kids showed up and they were doing okay, they just looked the other way. I mean, our kids, you know, if they were having a bad day, we'd throw them in the van and take them down to the Alano Club for a meeting at noon, you know, and or you know, every Friday we did field trips, take them out to the beach. I mean, we're in this beautiful area here, right? We would take them every spring up to Yosemite to go skiing and camping, where most of these kids, they had never even been in snow. I mean, you know, and we're taking them up here, they're skiing, and we took them backpacking, water rafting. So we did all this kind of outdoor stuff, but mostly it was about building community. Our motto was therapeutic community, and we became their family, really. And I learned so much from them. The other thing, most of the kids in the program had a history of school failure. Many of them were like ADD as kids and medicated, and, you know, couldn't do math and couldn't read, whatever. So another thing I really learned, which I'll talk about in a minute, is just the importance of motivation to learning. These kids were very capable. They were artistic. They were talented. They just, you know, they all came from trauma for the most part. Probably moderate to severe trauma. At one time, we were looking around, there were 6 females in the group, and the counselors and I are looking at it. I went, you know what? Every one of these females has been the victim of sexual violence. Every one of them. We just happened to particularly have that group at that time. And it's just like, hey, is it any wonder they're here? You know, but here we are. And the main thing that I learned, I think that I still use as a model, is that one of the things that we offered is that every morning when those kids walked into the classroom to spend their day, at least two adults would look them in the face and go, how are you doing today? You know, welcome, you know, and they weren't getting that at their high school. Here was a place where someone was going to be with them and witness them and mentor them all day long. And sometimes we didn't even have to say what's wrong. We knew them so well. Sometimes we'd look and we go, what's wrong? What's wrong? And they break into tears. Oh, my boyfriend broke up with me, or, you know, whatever. I got arrested last night, went to the hall, whatever. We could just read. We knew them so well. You know, it was really amazing. I learned so much. I did that for 7 years, and that was another amazing. I did a lot of other things in there too. That was just part of my responsibility. But anyway, I'm going on and on. I'm kind of coming down the wire.
It sounds like you did some amazing things. I really appreciate listening how you surfed your professional trajectory, and you like you quoted Joseph Campbell, following your bliss. That's awesome. All of the different experiences you've had. Something in this latter section of what you were speaking about, what's interesting, I think, for the group is you stress the importance of building therapeutic community. What would be your suggestion or encouragement for somebody that wanted to put themselves in a position to do the same?
Yes. Well, it's a good question. And part of the corollary here is kind of Sofia as community, which I'm really big on too, and wanting to promote, and why I'm like sort of in awe in this position as center director. It's like, yeah, we're going to do this. I think just an answer to your question, I think one thing is being able to find a community that is that resonates, that I want to be a part of. You know, the last 10 years I got involved in a men's community, which I love, and it's like the best therapy ever. It's been amazing for me. Finding different communities, people who like, you know, find 12-step communities or recovery communities, spiritual communities, with the caveat, I guess, that you have to kind of look and see kind of how they're structured and governed. Are they internal? You know, like my men's group, we're pretty much, we manage ourselves, and we have all these ways of like resolving conflicts, and it's pretty amazing. When I think of a spiritual community, I think of Sofia as a spiritual community, just because of our orientation. But even 12-step groups, I mean, it's very spiritual stuff. But there are some more overtly, perhaps maybe religious communities, but they're really communities all around. But I would say, you know, have to be really willing to go into really being in a community means putting a lot of self aside, you know, be willing to really look at myself, do some work on myself. How would I frame it? Be willing to put myself at the service of something larger than my ego. I guess I would say it that way, you know, in the service of something bigger than me. And that's the hard work, but that's the payoff too, because in doing that, becoming part of a community is just like, it's like coming home, I think. You know, we live our ethos in the West is so individually oriented, and we're all kind of driven by our, you know, like do our own work and blah, blah, blah. And to me, the older I get, the more I keep coming back to the spiritual community. Am I answering your question? Is that sort of
No,
like,
no, you certainly are. I think you're striking a good point about Sophia University being a spiritual community. I would say a spiritual scholarly community, which is just that much more beautiful, because we're still discovering things, learning things, navigating, and things like this. I wonder if anyone else has any questions before I prod further.
Yeah, I'm open to whatever. I'd like to have a good discussion here. And
Be awesome. If any of you have questions about your own professional trajectory, or maybe even anything that resonated with you and what John spoke about. John went the full gambit of experiences, from a Catholic school to researching sexualities. You know, with an experience like that, it does make you. I like that you said, like 20 years in, you looked back and it was like, oh, I was actually prepared to be in this perfect position for it. It is certainly, I certainly see it that way as well. But when you first look at those two things, you don't put them together. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel blessed at having some of those formative years be as wonderful and structured as they were. It really got me on the path. And I have to say, you know, in terms of community, I could say, as I was coming near the end of my career, I already had, you know, I had to get a master's degree for my administrative credential to be a school administrator and then a therapist. And I thought I was done, you know, but I'm a lifelong learner. I was probably 8 years maybe away from retirement. I went, you know, I want to get a PhD, but this one is going to be for me. Yeah. I'm just going to study what I want. And I had no intent on another career or teaching or anything. I just like wanted to do it. And I was seriously looking at Pacifica, you know, depth psychology, because I had been studying that my whole life. And then it was actually my wife that said, hey, have you seen this school over here? And it was ITP. And so I went, oh my gosh, this is it. So, you know, I came in with this idea that like, okay, this degree is for me. And I wanted to do it before I was too much older and while I was still working so I could pay off my school loans before retiring. That was kind of a thing. So I was 57 when I graduated in 2009. And, you know, I thought that was it. But then I kept wanting to come back. Like I went back to the next seminar. They had times when students could come back. And I was talking to one of my professors. He said, hey, you know, you have a lot of experience in this. You want to come and teach one of the practicum courses? And I go, yeah, sure, I'd love to. So there, I mean, yeah. So I started a practicum course and then I started, you know, all this other stuff. And the rest was history. Then I started teaching more and just, but I never set out with that intention in mind. The other thing I will say though, in doing the doctoral program is I got the research bug. I mean, it just like, I love research. So immediately after I finished, a classmate of mine and I said, oh, let's do some more research together. Okay, so we're still doing it, you know.
Your experience with all of those languages and different disciplines, I really admired. Like being in music has, you know, the creative element that transpersonal psychology really values. That's real transpersonal values. But then from a scientific scholarly point of view, all of that experience with language, Latin, French. I have a French neighbor right now, and she was speaking to me about all of these words that I didn't realize. I guess every word that has an ION at the end, transformation, or any of these words that have an ION at the end, that is French origin. I didn't realize that. And I was like, oh, now I speak French. Transformation. It's so easy. So like all of that background in language, Latin, French, Greek, whatever, it not only informs you from this spiritual place that is, you know, ingrained in transpersonal psychology, but also in this scientific place to be articulate and have a really cool vocabulary, really cool understanding of the language that is being used in research.
Yeah, it was very key for me. It was a big jump starter in terms of vocabulary and understanding word origins. And I still like to study linguistics and
I love the etymology of words. I love seeing where they're coming from.
It's the origin of ideas. I mean, you know, there it is. You got the whole history and so anyway, research is very, and isn't that, yeah, you would, Oh, no, we're talking about publishing. Yeah, that was another question you had maybe to talk about.
So the guiding questions here were, what is the process of becoming a professor, the publishing and co-authorship? Some of these questions come to mind for like your experience. You've been a professor for a long time, an educator. And so then also I know that you have that book on gratitude. And so things like this,
Yeah.
coming through from the lens of a student that is in the field of transpersonal psychology and just doesn't know where to go, or is just trying to cultivate an understanding of how to go in these particular directions. How do I become a published author? Or how do I get into a position of teaching or being able to hold community, all of those things. That's really that's just the flavor of transpersonal psychology.
Yeah, I mean, I can share my thoughts and a little bit of even my trajectory, but yeah, well, as I said, I kind of got the bug doing research and really loved it and came to appreciate the kind of scholarly approach that it takes, that scholarly frame of mind, and I just learned so much. And becoming a better writer too. I'm looking at Adam, we're in scholarly writing and all that, and I'm trying to motivate people to like, yeah, this is great. It's fun, but
you're so awesome, John. A few times I keep seeing like the light come on to your face, the way like, and I've seen this over the years too. I've seen these in person and intensives and things. When you speak about something you're really excited about, the light coming off of you is so genuine. It's really awesome.
Yeah. So my recommendation to people would be, do the research methods course, learn about research, do a really good dissertation, and then just keep building on it and continue to research. It's opened so many doors for me. When I was first teaching, in order to chair a dissertation, you had to be 5 years postdoc and been published and start publishing and doing more research. So some of those standards have lapsed, but I remember, and I wasn't in any hurry. I was using those 5 years to do some of the research, and I'm a big fan of encouraging people, find a colleague or someone else to study with.
Yeah.
We're working with Patty Lava, my classmate. It's just been a joy to share. It's so much more than just me like trying to figure things out alone, to have a colleague to work with and share the workload of research, and then writing together and publishing. So it really is one of the things I would recommend. And then just, stay with the scholarly community. Since I was pretty close, I was to Sofia, or ITP at the time, to really kind of get a sense of what might be good to publish. And one of the things, of course, is your dissertation. And then other studies. We did about 2 or 3 articles before then. We did the book on gratitude, but then we did the transpersonal gratitude scale, which is a whole nother, that's its own.
Do you did you have the opportunity to publish before your dissertation?
I did. I had one chapter in a book, and it was about sex. It was a book called Prager's Handbook of Learning in the Brain. It was this series, and I did a chapter, and it was my colleague from Positively Speaking program. He said, hey, they're looking for somebody to write a chapter on sex and the brain. And so I did some research and I did my little thing. So I just had that, but I had published my own journal called Ecstasy at the time. So I had actually done quite a bit of publishing on my own, of my own stuff. And I wrote a lot. And I have to say, for the career I was in, I was forever having to write grants, write reports on grants, write more grants for more money. For 24 years, I was on soft money. I had to write grants for everything I did. And so that level of technical writing really served me. I had to really be very precise, and that really translates over pretty well into scholarly writing to some degree.
It seems to me that the grant writing is if you're getting really good at writing proposal, right, or business plan, that is all very similar to grant writing. Would you say?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is just, kind of technical writing where precision, very clear word choice. There's a goal somewhere, in a grant writing, I'm trying to get funded. So I have a very specific goal, and I'm writing to two people. It was fun to telling people when I would do grant writing workshops, you're right, the two people are going to read your grant. That's who you're writing to, not your mother, not someone else. You're writing to two people, and that's who you need to influence, those kinds of things. So
who are those two people?
The two people who got conscripted by the federal government to come in and read your grant and score it. That's who you're writing to. They're going to score it, and that determines whether you get the grant or not. That's it. So it's that kind of stuff. The other thing I'll have to say I learned so much is reading other people's grants. That's where I really learned to be a grant writer. And that's how I learned to be a better writer. Reading everyone else's proposals, reading all the submissions. Adam, when you submit your wonderful summaries and scholarly writing, I learned from that. It's like it just reinforces. It's just that exposure to the genre, of scholarly writing. And one thing I do like about Sofia, though, is that in contrast to other universities who are very strict about their dissertations, we allow a certain amount of creativity in dissertation sections where you can share your own personal trajectory, like I just did. I opened my dissertation with my seminary experience of telling a priest that I had masturbated and the reaction I got from him and the guilt that it caused. That's how I opened my dissertation. Where can you do that? Now, come on, right? And, there's room for poetry in there. People, there's interesting, can be woven in. Now, it still has to be scholarly. You still have to do the other stuff, but come on, let's face it. I think we have the best of both worlds, and I want to see more and more of that sort of, creativity. People in the back, they put, they have their participants do artistic, symbols from their dreams and draw from their, psychoactive experiences or something, from taking ayahuasca, and then these are, I think I would say this, I think at Sofia in our dissertations, we're trying to reach multiple ways of knowing. And so we encourage multiple ways of writing to address those multiple ways of knowing. And so it's what I love about Sofia. And I think it's what we have is very special in that regard in terms of publishing. I will put in a plug while we're talking about publishing. We did a publishing webinar back in April.
Right.
Is it up yet? Gosh, we're trying to get the website up.
I think it is. I think it is on the website. I think that there's a place that you can find it. It's not like the portal, but they have some sort of weird.
The SharePoint kind of thing.
Yeah, SharePoint. There you go.
And I think it's supposed to be up on the Sofia YouTube channel. If anybody wants it, just email me. I'll give you the link. But coming up September 21st, during the seminar, we have Roy Carlisle, publisher with Bob Fraser, one of our founders at Page Mill Press. They do transpersonal books, and he's going to come on for 2 hours and enlighten us about the publishing industry and guide us in how to do that. And you'll be able to connect with him. And
I met him. He's a cool guy.
And that's going to be recorded as well. So we have these events. I really want to do a lot more about fostering, reaching out to our alumni, encourage them, hey, publish an article on your dissertation.
Yeah.
We really want to encourage now the center anyway with alumni of ongoing scholarship. So we're doing some other things to encourage that level of things. So anyway.
Yeah, I have another question for you. So When you spoke about the value of having another student, another peer working with you and writing together, when you say writing together, what does that look like? What does that mean to you, that writing together?
It means,
I've found often I've got into groups and we've tried to be in groups. I've done a few times. We've tried to be in these scholarly groups, and it's really more like sometimes during this pandemic, I've been in these dissertation groups where we are all connected via our phones on WhatsApp, but it's just having the person there. Like we're just working silently together. So we're doing it together, sort of, and it was kind of nice,
yeah,
but
it's a good question, and thank you for the clarification, because it is hard to like just sit down and write at the same time. Like, what do you think?
right.
Writing together means one of us does the first draft on, okay, you do this chapter, I'll do this chapter, or you do this section, I'll do that section.
Mhm.
And then we swap and we give input, and then we kind of have to schmooze it out and make sure that the voice is very consistent, because we're talking about two scholarly voices. We want it to sound like one really great writer,
Yeah.
as opposed to two really great writers trying to come together.
I think that's really important for us Sophia students and scholars as transpersonal students in general to hear, because I never really understood that process. So there's like all of these co-authors on this article.
Oh,
What is the process of them writing together? What you just said, just to reiterate, is that if two scholars are coming together, maybe they are working on sections that they are most inclined towards,
yes.
and swapping to do the edit, and then merging them together. And so maybe the conversations of word choice and development in that writing, that's how people people will speak about, oh, I became a better writer because of that experience. That is how that is happening. That's
Yes.
really great to hear.
Yeah, no, I think that's one. I contributed to one article. I think there were like 5 or 6 authors, and the lead author just kind of divvied up everything. Okay, John, you're going to work on this section. So I did the research, and then it takes a little more pulling together, I would say, but it's a great experience working with other scholars.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fond of saying in the course, how many articles do you see these days being published that only has one author? Not very many. You look at them, and most of them are 2, 3, and
And in the beginning of your professional journey, that's maybe not necessarily the way to have to aspire for ambitious opportunities. If that's you, that's sort of that's my temperament, is to be very ambitious. It's not really the way to do it all by yourself, but to have this co-authoring relationship with scholars that maybe have already had their name out there a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. I think that's, one way to go. Yeah, there's other configurations, but I think I'm trying to think of what else.
Do you think that could be maybe like a course or an activity or some kind of thing offered at Sophia University for this, like holding a space for co-authoring? Because I think if that was something that was partially facilitated, I guess it's really up to the writers themselves. But if Adam is in that scholarly writing course, I've taken that course, there's not so much that opportunity to do it with others, at least when I took that course with Carol.
Yeah. No, not necessarily right. However, there are multiple points within the course where I have students read each other's work and comment on it, like in the discussion forums. At first, it might just be a paragraph or two, and so people to read others. But at the end, the culminating activity or project is a 10-page literature review, and I literally have students swap papers and do a critique of each other's, because I learned so much by reading other people's stuff, particularly with my scholarly eye on, and I go, how can this be improved? And it just makes me a better writer. It just,
Yeah.
so I think trying to put those in, but now how to encourage maybe more, how to encourage more writing. When I was first coming on, my chair was Mark McCaslin, and he was the chair for a while of the global PhD program. And he was going to start promoting having students come together to do a dissertation together, a co-authored dissertation. He was real big on this. He just thought it was the way to go. Now, it never got followed up on. It's not on the radar yet, but I don't know. I don't know what other, I've seen one or two that were co-authored. I don't know how it would go over, but one thing I am interested in doing from the center is maybe having Sofia take on an institutional research project. Like we pick a topic,
Please.
and I get 4 or 5 students together and go, these next 2 terms, it's going to be an official course. You'll get credit. We're going to do a bunch of data collection on this topic. And then in the second term, we're going to analyze it and write up an article and send it out to public,
That sounds awesome.
And I have some interesting topics. I am open to different topics, but that's sort of where I would like to go.
I attempted to do something similar to that by at the intensive seminars, like the one intensive seminar before pandemic. So then pandemic happened and I didn't get to follow up on this. But I had the student body get together and I just asked, what does transpersonal psychology mean to you? And so there's variety levels of people involved in the school, in the field. Some people were brand new. Some people have been around a few years and more. And it was really interesting to get those. And it would be, that would offer something similar to what the authors in the Wiley-Blackwell Handbook of Transpersonal Psychology did. I believe, did Harris do that?
Or did Harris Friedman and Glenn Hartilius, you mean? Yeah, they might have.
I can't remember which one of them wrote that study, that defining transpersonal psychology study. I think it was. I think it might have been Glenn Hartilius.
It was Glenn, yeah. And then he did a follow-up to that, which was.
So if there was and the follow-up one as well. But if there was like a student edition of that kind of study, that would be tremendous. And it gives the university, the field as a whole, some sort of it realigns the compass. It does some good work in getting that compass.
Exactly. I'm a big fan of having students involved in research because I think that's how you learn. And we should be a teaching and research institution. We want to produce good researchers, and more than just doing a dissertation, multiple opportunities to practice. I think I had some of those, but one of the things I'm doing at the center, and maybe this could be a student project, I don't know, but I'm having someone go back and look at every dissertation ever published by ITP or Sofia. And there's 775 dissertations, and we're doing a spreadsheet with the title, the author, the topic and keywords, and the method for all 775. And then we're going to be able to look at, these are all the topics that Sofia has done, 40 dissertations on this topic, 30 on this. These are all the methods we've used. This is how many times. And do like an analysis of just what has gone on, just like Glenn did, of defining transpersonal. This is sort of like where we've been.
That'd be amazing.
And then students can go in. If you're doing your dissertation, Travis, you should be able to go in and say, how many other students have used my method on a maybe similar topic? Has anyone done anything on free will? Well, we're going to sift that out.
Yeah.
And you should have been able to do this before, but we're not there yet. Now we're doing,
I've seen a couple. I think that's just like proper scholarship and researching your topic is to go through really easily found. And I work at the library. Lisa's really great in the library.
Oh, yeah,
The
exactly.
we're happy to direct you, and it's pretty easy to find those dissertations and things that have previously been published by and authored by Sofia students and ITP students. And that's been spoken about. Yourself and Lisa have spoken about that a few times,
Yeah,
and how to do that thing. That's all really great. This has actually been a very informative in a cool way. This is sort of the idea that I was going for. I think we really met the points. So
good.
we talked about like the process of becoming a professor. So these taking the opportunities to be involved in community, that is going to open up these things. We spoke about in our last meeting about finding a community that is already doing the work that you are in favor of, the already working with the population that you are interested in helping out with you is maybe the AIDS epidemic, but it became the LGBTQ community as well. Things like this. And so how do you increase our generativity in the field by publishing more, by more opportunities to practice,
Yeah,
to co-author, to work with other peers, to stay in the scholarly community of professionals, so that you can network there. And those things happen in conferences. That's the kind of thing that Marilyn suggested in our last meeting as well.
yeah, that's a very good. Yeah, very good point too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions about, or I didn't know that all of this about your trajectory, and I'm really happy to hear all of this. So you know those meetings. Oh, thank you, Lita. So the meetings for the ATP, those Saturday meetings. Did
Mhm.
you get to listen to Jorge Frere's meeting? Were you a part of that?
No, is it recorded? I had a,
It is recorded. Those are supposed to be available eventually. I've been asking for that one because that one was at a different time, and I got confused with that one, and
I did too. That's why I couldn't do it. I booked something else thinking it was going to be at noon or
yeah,
whatever. And then they shifted the time, or 10, whatever. They shifted the time, and I
shifted
went,
it because
darn.
he's that charismatic guy is in Spain. So I really
Yeah,
like Jorge Frere's work. I think another point, just to tie in Frere's work, is like that participatory thing. I think that is important in the innovation of learning and students in the center of innovation. And these are things that I've been speaking about many times over the years, been trying to encourage. But it is the participating, the student body participating in the co-construction of a course, what it is that we are going to learn here. You sort of just spoke about that in a way that like maybe students sort of co-generating the topic for research, and that being a course that you can actually get credit for, and maybe that's like a co-author publishing sort of course. Something like that would be tremendous. I think that has that participatory element, that in, as his work has shown, it's the next turn, it's the experiential is important, those intensives and things. And then how are we allowing the flexibility of members of the community to participate in constructing what we are doing?
yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, it behooves us from the center and different programs to get more and more student input into the construction of the courses, the nature of the education, how I would love to see more and more ways for that to happen. I think we do to some degree, um, reach out to students and get input and have more student involvement. So there's student involvement in the construction of the course, but there's also constructing courses that maximize student involvement.
Yeah.
So there's that element too. And are we teaching and presenting material in such a way in which students are actively involved?
Mm-hmm.
So I would assert that that's good education, you know, that
Right.
it.
And it really takes for the Sofia, the spiritual scholarly community that is Sofia University, but also the field of transpersonal psychology. It really requires students and just all members of the community to be engaged, involved, participating, all of those things to maximize that involvement. Nobody can like pull you in. I'm always very enthusiastic and encouraging and stuff, but I think I can even be overwhelming to many people. And so it just I'm just again encouraging that it does require engagement from everybody. So I was interested in what you thought about Jorge Ferrer's work, because he had the relational freedom concept. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you've
just,
seen that, but that
and
his book just came out as well.
yeah, I got his book a few days before. I had pre-ordered it and it was
Awesome.
there. And he published an article in the International Journal of Transpersonal Studies. There
Yep.
was a special issue about in 2019 on sexuality, and I had one of my articles in there on the
Okay.
sexual ecstasy scale.
Mhm.
And so I went back and I pulled that out, and have been very intrigued. That's why I wanted to hear him. But I did include the article and some sections from, I think, a YouTube he did in the course on Eros and Gender, which I'm going to be teaching again in fall, just
Wow.
coming up. I bumped up some of the modules to reflect his work on polyamory
No.
and celibacy and some other things that we got put in there.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to hear it. I was very excited about it.
That
So
whole idea of relational freedom being beyond polyamory, I think is really good.
yeah,
There is a good article out there that is titled "Monogamy, Polyamory, and Beyond."
yeah.
And you've probably seen that one. So that's really cool. They also had another person that was interested in transcendent sex, like maybe a few months prior to that. And that is Dr. Stuart Savatsky.
Blavatsky, yes.
Have you
Yeah.
seen his work as well?
Oh yeah, back in the
Yeah.
early 90s, I had him.
He was a character that, but the things that he was saying about sex was like the energy of sex was really fascinating. It was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I have a couple articles by him that he wrote for a magazine I was publishing, and I include those in the course as well. Stuart Savatsky. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then of course Jenny Wade was 2 times ago, but she was speaking about something different. But she has a long
Right.
scholarly investment in the subject of sexuality.
Mm-hmm. I could see that from her somehow. But no, yeah, her topic was on like battle rage,
Oh,
or
I know that was
battle
so interesting.
battle states, and it was really
Yeah,
fascinating. She brought in talks about the Maoris, which are indigenous New Zealanders. And
yeah,
I had once been initiated into a haka. So
yeah.
I'm initiated to do the haka stuff, and really fascinating, all of that work as well. So all of those things that we're talking about now are from the Association of Transpersonal Psychology. They do that like the second Saturday of every month.
Yes.
These are open to the transpersonal community, people that are actually interested and involved in the transpersonal community. We don't want people that are not as interested to overwhelm the group, but you're more than welcome if you're a student of the field. And also ATP does have the opportunity for you to become a student member of the organization. That's a good way to stay involved. That's a good way to get future publications. You get newsletters. That I am a co-editor of a newsletter, things like this. So stay involved.
Thanks,
I think,
Travis. Yes, I strongly encourage everyone, get your own membership. I'm a member, and I'm in the process of having Sofia become an institutional member. We need to be a member as
right.
a university, right? So yeah.
I agree. I agree. And that just like maintains our place at those conferences and things. There's probably a conference that'll be happening in Italy in 2023, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
These opportunities for young students or just students in general of the field, even if you consider yourself an alumni, I consider you still a student of the field. If you're still in research, you're still involved. And there's a wealth of opportunities to be a part of these conferences, and gives you a reason to go to these other countries and stuff. I love traveling with a reason to be there. It makes the pocketbook feel like it's directed in a proper way. Thank you so much, John, for everything that we've heard today from you. I don't personally have any questions. Is there any remaining questions from anybody else out there?
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you a little bit. I love the Koki frogs.
Oh, sorry.
Every time. No,
Okay. They're just there. Yeah, I have not question, just an observation, because right now there's actually like the big APA annual conference happening, like like it started today and it's until Saturday, and I'm actually participating because I want to know what's happening in the field.
Awesome.
And I was surprised that there's no mentioning of any of the topics that we talk about, and I think that's sad. I think there should be.
Yeah.
I mean, like the closest that you can in topics is maybe imagination or that creativity, but like there's really, I think that we should be there. Like, something should be, it would be interesting to see how that could be. Like, I know that, for example, Stanley Krippner's books, they're published there. And like, I remember in one of the talks that hearing that he had a very good, communication and connection to them. And like, that's the field of mainstream psychology. I think it would be kind of interesting to see how it could be connected, like how they could be like, kind of be nourished from what we are doing in transpersonal psychology, and even just know that exists, because I was just baffled that there was nothing even remotely related to any of the topics that we would be interested in.
Yeah, that is so true, Petra. Your closest bet is going to be anywhere that is speaking in the humanistic realm. So Abraham Maslow, at the height of his career, he was the president of the APA, and that was around the time that transpersonal psychology was just becoming a thing. Him being one of the fathers of the field, but he also passed away sort of at the height of his career. And so that's why there's been this trouble of integrating transpersonal psychology with the APA. What that says, what that should encourage, I hope, is for yourself, for any of us to submit something to those conferences, and hopefully accepted to speak on that, and inspire some of those mainstream scholars to break out of that rigid shell, that rigid clothing they got on.
Thank you for being there.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you're there. And I guess it is a little discouraging to hear that there isn't more, progress being made, and still doing the same old stuff. So I would agree, the whole, it's Division 32, the humanistic psychology, is probably our best inroad into that field, but it also says, boy, we still have a lot of work to do, don't we?
Right. Well, so the reason that humanistic psychology is our inroad is because Abraham Maslow was heavily involved with humanistic psychology, and so when I speak, so there's a scholar, his name's Scott Barry Kaufman. He has a book called Transcend. He's pretty. He's pretty popular. Like, he has a lot of visibility, which I think is important for us, anybody that is really ambitious about the field and their and their opportunity. He has a podcast called the Psychology Podcast. What a great way to land on a great name, buddy. So he talks about, he has a book called Transcend, and it's the new science of human transformation or transcendence, something like this. And he never speaks about transpersonal psychology, but he speaks a lot about Abraham Maslow, and he speaks a lot about humanistic. And I find all of the stuff that he's speaking about, the things that he is interested in, I think that the words, the language of transpersonal psychology aids to that benefit. But I think he might also steer away, believing that the mainstream will not, it won't be accepted as much. So those are things to just be aware of, but hopefully also encouraging for us to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, like maybe like I saw one presentation today. It was like it was actually graduate students presenting their different research about creativity, for example.
Yep.
Which I thought was cool. They were all from like I think one university or maybe two universities, but it was one topic. Each was presenting 8 minutes, but like I guess they just probably submitted it. I wonder if you know, something like that could be done from us theoretically. Like it just probably would need to be a good topic, like, you know, something, you know, that's in, like maybe, you know, mindfulness or something, is or anything connected to that, or like anything that is
Petra,
useful.
are you are you in the PhD program?
Yes.
Okay, so when you are working on your dissertation, there, you know, when you're working, waiting to speak with your committee, and John could speak some on this as well, more than I, but you're getting ready to speak to your community. You're going to have like a PowerPoint, your presentation to that committee, to become the candidate and things like this. Also submitting those type of things to these conferences, to, you know, as many conferences as you can, you know, in 1 year, maybe plan to speak at 3 or 4 conferences, and create a poster and things. I've seen some of the transpersonal students at other universities have this sort of opportunity at international transpersonal psychology conferences. Usually, you either get on a panel, or you have your own talk, or you have both, and then maybe you have a poster, and those poster submissions, those are potential ways in, for sure. John, do you have other words on that?
No, I would agree what you're saying. I think that's those are all great ideas, and I'm glad you're there beating the drum, Petra. It's good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Petra. I appreciate all those questions. Those are good. Really important questions.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Anyone else? All right. I think that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you so much, John, for being with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're a wealth of wisdom and bright light when you're enthusiastic about things. I really love to see it. It's really awesome.
I just tell anybody, reach out to the center. Keep looking, the Center for Innovation and Teaching and Learning. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.